Hello, my name is Linda Gabby. I'm a member of the Clear Light community and the Golden Lotus Board. And on behalf of everyone here at Song of the Morning, our community, our Yoga Retreat Center, and the Golden Lotus Yoga Teachers Association, it is my great honor and pleasure to welcome all of you to YogaFest 2020. We are here alongside Gitanjali, the Pigeon River, in the heart of the YogaFest grounds. And if you can join me in imagining all of the tents, the people, the children, the families, all of you here with us. We will in our hearts recreate the festival that we've come to know and love. And to those of you that are joining for the first time, a wonderful, warm welcome. We hope that someday circumstances soon will allow you to come join us here on our property, these sacred grounds with this rich, divine vibration that I think we all feel when we're here together. So, a year ago at YogaFest, we looked with excitement and anticipation to the 50-year anniversary of Song of the Morning in 2020, to the 20-year anniversary of the Clear Light community, and for us, the exciting thing, the 10-year anniversary of YogaFest. And all of that aligning with the 100-year commemoration of Paramahansa Yogananda's arrival in the United States and his bringing to the West his worldwide mission of yoga and the teachings of God realization, really, the founding of his organization, Self-Realization Fellowship. Who knew a year ago that we would be connecting in the heart, but remotely this year for YogaFest? Hasn't this been a year? And what a time. I'm so struck by the thought of the coronavirus being COVID Ma and her bringing to us these uncertain times, this suffering that we see all around us, but also this rich opportunity to really contemplate the changing nature of being in a human body and being in this realm. All of that in the context of the changeless eternal spirit. And I think her invitation is for us to go inside, to reconnect with what is most important, to self-introspect and to see that within us, within our culture, within our communities, in our world, that no longer works, and to purify ourselves in this sacred time. So I invite all of you this weekend to join me in really thinking about how we can use our time together to do that work and to offer all of it to the healing, the harmony, the peace of our communities, our country, and our world. For those of you that are joining us for the first time, I'd like to just say a word about Song of the Morning. We're here, as I said, on the Pigeon River, lovingly called Gitanjali. We're in the middle of the state forest here in northern Lower Michigan. We have 800 acres of beautiful nature, and we've been here now for 50 years. We were founded by J. Oliver Black. Many lovingly call him Yogacharya. He was a direct disciple of our guru, Paramahansa Yogananda. And we were founded at Yogananda's behest. He envisioned a retreat center, a community, people coming together who were of like mind and who wanted to grow in God together and to benefit others. And in this time, it's relevant to also remember that he and Yogacharya envisioned this as a haven of safety. And living here at this time, what a blessing. I so feel that. So join us this weekend, and I hope that you will feel the peace of the Gitanjali and Song of the Morning, and that you will be so near in the heart. You will be very close in our hearts. So with that, I'd like to make an offering into the river. Those of you that are returning for perhaps even a number of times will recognize the offering into the river We've done it at various times during YogaFest, but at the beginning with opening ceremonies, what we're usually offering in is our intentions, our prayers, our wishes for the weekend. So if you'll gather up your own intentions for this weekend, but join me in extending that to a prayer and a lived experience of wishing for healing, peace, harmony, love, and light into this, this world at this time. Now please join me here alongside Gitanjali, the Pigeon River, here at Song of the Morning. And we will do as we do every year and make an offering into the river with our intentions for this weekend. So if you'll think about what it is that you would like to purify, clarify, come in touch with, expand out into, offer into the world, your community, and your own life this weekend, I'll join you in that, as we all will. Let's also expand our intentions to include our nation, our communities, our world, and to offer healing rays of love and light, of peace and harmony into the world and into this uncertain and difficult time. What I have here in this basket are offerings from our property. I've offered thank you as I've taken bits of cedar, birch, pine, native wildflowers. Om Amiteshwari Namaha. Om Thank you. It is my great honor to introduce our brother and our dear friend, Naren Schreiner, who is joining us today from Southern California. Naren has been with us for YogaFest and at various times during the year at Song of the Morning for 6 years now. And he calls himself our friend and well-wisher. And he has played a role in helping to bring us into the heart of YogaFest, but also to feel the presence of our teacher, Paramahansa Yogananda. Naren will be giving kind of an opening talk. He'll be talking about his experience here at the ranch, Song of the Morning, but also at YogaFest and these sacred lands. But he'll also be helping us to think about the importance of the 100-year anniversary of Paramahansa Yogananda's having come to the West. Naren has studied deeply and with great resolve and pure heart, both in India and for 14 years in the ashram of Paramahansa Yogananda Self-Realization Fellowship. He's the founder of Sangeeta Yoga. And with that, I'd like to invite you to join us. Thank you.
Do all know ज्ञानमूर्तिं द्वन्द्वातीतं गगनसदृशं तत्त्वमस्यादिलक्ष्यम् एकं नित्यं विमलमच्चलं सर्वधी साक्षीभूतं भवातीतं त्रिगुणरहितं सद्गुरुं तं नमामि। Namaste, dear friends. I'm imagining being on the holy land of Song of the Morning with the Gitanjali River, the Pigeon River, flowing by with her beautiful song. She never stops singing. And the wind blowing through all of those trees, the moving clouds in the sky, sometimes a chance of rain or other times sun. The joyous voices of all of our little friends who we call children because they are smaller in form, or they've been here for just a few years or a handful of years, and yet when you look in their eyes, you see they're not children in that sense, or that we're all children. And thinking of all of the elders that come together with their tremendous years of experience and their compassion for us who are still trudging through life, their wisdom, their willingness to share, and their willingness to understand and try to make sense of who we are now. Those of us in the middle, I guess I identify as in the middle somewhere. My friends, all of you, my friends, I am sad to not be with you in person. I'm sad to not have that experience this summer. However, knowing that some of you are watching this right now makes me feel united in some way. And I'm very grateful to be able to have this opportunity to contribute once again to YogaFest, to this coming together. YogaFest, for the years that I've been coming, truly is a gathering of hearts from different traditions and backgrounds to come together in what I see as Yogananda's home. It's been that way for me. I, from a young age, felt drawn, called close to the heart of Paramahansa Yogananda. I truly felt that I had been with him before, but more importantly, that he was with me now. I felt that as a little boy in Los Angeles, California. And so when I first came to Song of the Morning, on that property, knowing that one of his disciples, who some know as Oliver Black, and others call lovingly Yogacharya, knowing that he created this land really as a gift to his guru, as an honor to Paramahansa Yogananda, to have a place where people could come together in a spiritual unity. That vision that Paramahansa Yogananda had in his lifetime in the 20s, 30s, 40s was for a community, a place where people could come together and support one another in a spiritual way, and even in a material way. He used different terminology throughout his life. He at times called it a golden world city, other times a world brotherhood colony. He wanted to see that kind of unity, and he was speaking about this at a time when there were world wars happening and tremendous race prejudice and religious persecution, caste oppression, things that are still happening. Luckily not a world war, but many, many things are happening like that. And what was his answer was, yes, seek that divine relationship in your own life and in your own heart, and he offered that to the path of yoga, to the yogic tradition, to attain spiritual liberation through yoga, and specifically Kriya Yoga, which is part of the Raja Yoga system. But socially, because he was a responsible guru, he was a guru for all. He wanted to make this world a better place. His vision was these types of communities where people could come together. He was very practical about it. And so Yogacharya wanted to continue that. And that's what Song of the Morning is. And so when I first set foot on the property in Song of the Morning, it wasn't just the beauty. I've been to many beautiful places. I've been to national parks and been, to the beautiful sites, right? It's the vibration. And what is that vibration? What is that presence that's there? It's a presence of spiritual love and of spiritual consciousness. And knowing that they were all in the same tradition as me, and that Paramahansa Yogananda's vision and his love and his spiritual practice, I thought, oh, this is like home. This is like Yogananda's home. And in that spirit, I felt, oh, how wonderful. Now there's 600 people here at Yogananda's home. They may not know him, they may not feel drawn to him as a guru of sorts, but they know of him. And they're enjoying his place, enjoying meeting us, and we can rejoice in fellowship and in friendship. The divisions that are in the world seem to have multiplied, but the fundamental unity is so wonderful to experience in a place like Song of the Morning at a time like YogaFest. I decided in that spirit also to film this outside in a very special place. This is where I come a lot to have my meditations, my fire ceremonies, my yajna havans here and under the tree. Imagining all of you and me together at Song of the Morning. Paramahansa Yogananda came here to America 100 years ago in 1920. And so I would like to speak to that a little bit and bring to your minds what it was that he envisioned and how relevant it is today. One of the first books that he wrote, well, the first was a book of poems called Songs of the Soul that he wrote in 1920. And it really shows the beauty and the divinity of poetry. Sacred poetry. The mystics of the Persian mystics, right? Rumi, Hafiz. The great poets of India like Kalidas. The song, the singers, the divine ecstatic singers like Mirabai, Kabir, Surdas. So many of them saw the divinity of poetry. Even Saint Teresa of Avila, the Spanish mystic, wrote poems. And so, while it might surprise some who view yoga as a science and who view Paramahansa Yogananda as a teacher of science, of philosophy and science, well, why did he write a book of poems? Well, if you read the poems knowing that they are coming from that divine consciousness and divine love, it makes sense. The next publication he wrote was Whispers from Eternity. These he defined as something different, not quite poems in the traditional sense, and not quite prayers in the traditional sense, because he said, a prayer sounds like you're begging. And he says, why do you have to beg to your mother? Why do you have to beg to your father? He said, demand with love, knowing that you are a child. There are also inspirations and different perceptions, and he wrote songs. This was in 1935. Although many of his talks had a scientific nature to them, like his talk on the science of religion, it was later published to be a book, but it wasn't something that he sat down to write. But it was good that that came forth, that book, Science of Religion. But Whispers from Eternity, it's very beautiful, and he said in one of his poems, when I am no longer here and you will not hear my voice, read my whispers from eternity. Through it I shall eternally speak to you. I would like to read his dedication to this book in 1935. Dedicated unto all the soul temples of Christians, Muslims, Buddhists, Hebrews, Hindus, and others, wherein the cosmic heart is throbbing equally always, and unto all the multicolored lamps of various true teachings, in which shines the same one white flame of God, and unto all churches, mosques, viharas, tabernacles, and temples of the world, wherein our one Father dwells, impartially in the fullness of his glory. Coming to America in 1920, I think as time passes, looking back 100 years, we might forget what that meant for him and for anyone really to travel that distance. It wasn't the distance only, although it was a long boat ride, 1 month approximately. The difference of culture is so great. You know, now we say the world is getting smaller because of technology and sharing of information. But back then, the gap, the perceived gap between the East and West, between the Occidental and the Oriental, it seemed to be an insurmountable barrier. It seemed impossible to have any kind of understanding between the two. Well, the ones that came before Yogananda-ji, there were two from India, Swami Vivekananda and then Swami Ramtirtha. Swami Vivekananda-ji came in 1893. Swami Ramtirtha came shortly after, in 1902 or so. And 20 years later, Paramahansa Yogananda came. He was a yogi, and that's why his tremendous book, which he said would be his ambassador, well, it took him 26 years to write it. The autobiography of the yogi, which was released finally in 1946, after he had come to America in 1920. And he writes a little bit about what it means to be a yogi. And I think that some may look at this book and say, wow, it's so splendorous and miraculous and hard to believe and hard to relate to. But if you read it again and again and really look deeply, it is a book about love. It is a book about love and about relationship and about seeking. Because it starts with his love for his mother and his desire to be with the great yogis, and with the death of his mother, and with his seeking the Divine Mother, and with his tears, with his running away home to reach the yogis in the Himalayas who will show him the mysteries of life, with his friends, with his difficulties he had with his family, finding different yogis and different saints, eventually calling out, sobbing, calling to Divine Mother, and then his guru comes, crying at his feet, making a mutual promise together of love, where Sri Tiswar said, I will love you forever, unconditionally. And then the times with his guru, who so lovingly yet firmly disciplined him, trained him. Then Sri Tiswar saying, why are you keeping all of this to yourself? You must give to others. You must share the divine wealth, the divine fruits that you have with others. That's love, you know? And Sri Tiswar, when he was at the Kumbh Mela, and he was criticizing the hypocrisy that he saw with religions. Why are there hypocrites? And he thought about people in the far and distant lands of America and wondered, could they be here? Could they come to this Mela so we could all exchange? And Babaji came to him and said, I could feel the pangs of your heart great enough for all mankind. That is love. That is expansion. His desire was to share, to expand, to include. And Babaji said, I will send one to you. And he sent Yogananda. And Babaji said to Sri Tiswar, write a book called The Holy Science that shows our scriptures of India and connects them with the scriptures of the Abrahamic faith, of the Bible, the Old and New Testament. Again, bringing together love, relation. Then Yogananda is sent to America. Give of this. Give of this. He writes about Lahiri Mahashaya, who lived also a life of love. Lahiri Mahashaya gave Kriya Yoga to people of different religions, to men and women alike. He himself was a lovely accountant, married with children, and yet he demonstrated the glory of God. No one was excluded. He translated the Bhagavad Gita in a language that was considered less. You know, it was looked down upon, and he said, no, I will publish the Bhagavad Gita, translate it and publish it, so that all can read it. Again, this is in the autobiography. This is in the autobiography, in writing about the mystics of different religions, like Teresa Neumann, who had mystic communion with Christ, and about a Muslim fakir who had these almost miraculous powers and his own humility through his lessons in life. So much. Then what he tried to accomplish in America, what he tried to teach. Coming back to India, weeping to see his guru, and again, and then beholding his guru's passing and grieving for his guru's passing. Meeting Mahatma Gandhi. You know, there's just so much. He writing about his concerns about the World War, saying that there needs to be more brotherhood, there needs to be more love. Writing about coming back to America and sharing more with people and helping to establish a colony. That is what I see when I read the autobiography of the yogi. Everything else is, yes, it's true. It's not that I'm demeaning it, but that scripture of love is his life, is his core teaching. And the Kriya Yoga is a method that is universal and not cultural. And that is why it is something scientific that all can apply. And so he brought Kriya Yoga, which is my path, my tradition, in the context of love. Love for God, love for Divine Mother. You know, he was the first to present the concept of Divine Mother. The ones before him did not publicly speak about the motherhood of God. He brought chanting. He was the first one to publicly hold kirtan in the 1920s, to teach people to sing to God. Of course, the Christians and many other religions knew about singing to God, but he brought it in a new way, in new life. He made the harmonium known in America and used it. His message of love carries on today, and that's what you feel when you come to Song of the Morning, because Song of the Morning is such a loving, kind place, such an open place. I honestly don't know, honestly, do not know of a place outside of India that opens its doors to some 600 people. Women, children, families and children, I wanted to say. That's a unique thing too, that families come with children. And that you don't have to be a part of the ashram or part of the religion. You don't have to belong. Nobody asks you, well, who are you with? It's very unique that Song of the Morning does that. And I want to highlight that that comes from Paramahansa Yogananda. That was his ideal. And Yogacharya carried that. And that's why something like a YogaFest is held, where there's so many differences held in a spirit of unity. I want you to know that that divine love, that inclusiveness, that celebration also has its root in these spiritual traditions. And because it's in the very name, YogaFest, I'm not trying to speak in an interfaith grand way here of all different religions, although I do respect our religions, as we know these great souls Yoganandaji did. But specifically I'm talking about yoga. Not the yoga that has become very commercialized, and not even the physical yoga, but the path of yoga which is union of soul with spirit. And that yoga of bringing together can only be possible by love, because as Sri Teshwar says in Holy Science, the very function of love in all creation is to bring together, to unite. And therefore the yoga practice has the goal of purifying the soul. Purifying, not the soul, I'm sorry, because the soul is pure, but cleaning what is covering the soul. More correct. Atma Shuddhi means that there is coverings around the soul, coverings of ignorance, veils where we don't know, we have forgotten who we truly are. We have forgotten God. We have forgotten unity. We have forgotten our oneness with other people, with our brothers and sisters. Yoga, whether it's happening in some kind of pranayam or kriya, is active, but with the goal of love and unity. Yoga manifested as singing the divine name of God through kirtan, that is a form of yoga. Again, love, calling, uniting. Right? Jnana yoga, the yoga of wisdom that says, why is there separation? Is this separation a dream? What is real? What is the reality? Who am I? I want to unite. I want to come together. I want to know. I want to see. Because once we see, there is no division and separation. Once we see, we unite. The function of vision is unity, right? Even physically. I cannot see anything until it has reached my eyes, my retina, my nervous system, right? The connectedness. Yoga is union, and it includes love. This was the way that Paramahansa Yogananda taught. That even though there's a technical, scientific side of it, without love, it is not complete. Because that binding, uniting quality of love. And that is why he manifested love. He brought people together. He said in one of his talks, here we do not ask who comes from the Christian religion or comes from the Jewish religion. All we ask is if you love. He spoke this way. And what joy to bring different people together. And that's why that has been handed down. That Yogacharya lived that way. And the people who live at Song of the Morning and who come to Song of the Morning it's kind of in the flavor of the place. You know, a kindness, an acceptance, an inclusiveness, regardless of one's background, regardless of one's affiliations, regardless of one's external appearance, whether it's color or dress, regardless of one's sexual orientation, regardless of one's political beliefs, right? None of that matters. It all falls away and two souls greet. Namaste. Welcome to Song. That spirit is why YogaFest is a joyous occasion. And I always connect it to Paramahansa Yogananda because I know that that's, in effect, his place. His place. And he didn't want to make everyone his. He didn't believe in that, otherwise he wouldn't have written that kind of a dedication. He rejoiced in the diversity. And he offered to people, if you want, I freely give a way, a universal way, that's called yoga, that comes from my lineage of teachers, that comes from my land, which he called India, which taught the eternal Dharma, which we are freely giving to all. He said in his poem, My India, my Western brothers, by matter's might have conquered my land, right? By the might of matter, which means by physical power, material power, and wealth, and machinery, and technology, and ambition, my Western brothers have conquered my land. Then he said, blow all ye conch shells blow, meaning the conch shells of India, which is the call of the warrior and the call of the temple. Blow all ye conch shells, blow. India now invades with love. She sends her soldier saints abroad. Not to conquer, to conquer their souls with love and with realization's ray to break down the barriers and ignorance. What a magnificent. Every time I recite it, I get chills. That's what he did. He was like a soldier saint. And while he recognized that the Western world, especially at that time, was colonizing and conquering strictly with material might, he said, we will devise a counterattack. We will respond with our saints. Because they had the higher teaching. They knew of the law of love. They knew of the law of the transformative, redemptive power of love, and the essential law of nonviolence, ahimsa, which is upheld as one of the highest laws of all creation. Nonviolence, non-aggression. He says, our counterattack will be with love. And we will send our saints to conquer their hearts with love. That was his goal. That's what he wanted to do. That's what he wanted to bring. Yet it wasn't easy. He said, I did not experience just a little trepidation with the thought of going to America, because he was a yogi. And I will say that even though I was so drawn to Yoganandaji at a very young age, I think it was from some deep intuitive knowing, right? But I didn't know what a yogi was. I couldn't remember or perceive or conceive of what an actual yogi is in its true tradition, its native tradition. And even after reading the autobiography and reading so many other writings and old magazines that are no longer published about Yoganandaji and yogis, it wasn't until I went to India and asked if I could be brought in to some of these ashrams or some of these temples where they live, where they teach, that I truly saw. I mean, I had some exposure here and some teachers here that helped, but I had even greater appreciation of what it meant for Paramahansa Yogananda as a young yogi named Swami Yogananda, as a yogi, living in his Guru's ashram, Sri Teswarji, and although it was British India and it was Kolkata, still, he just wore a couple of cotton cloths on his body that he didn't buy at the store. He dipped them in a dye that was made by mud from the earth called gerwa, which is said to be red from the color of Divine Mother's menstruation, her blood into the earth. And this sacred earth, we dye our white cotton into the color of sannyas. That's all he wore. He spent most of his time in meditation, kriya sadhana. He knew the importance of serving others, and so his guru said, you must give to others. And so he started a small school on a mango plantation, teaching young children, child education, a gurukula. And there wasn't a lot of interaction between the British. The British conquered the land and ruled it oppressively. But it's not like he had British friends. They knew how to coexist. So his yogic life, his surroundings, he was not a religious minority. He was surrounded by the Hindus, but they were being oppressed, but he could still freely go to temples. He could fulfill his sadhana. 1920, he goes. And he said, I felt trepidation, but he felt God called him. And Sri Teswar had told him many times, you will be going to the West. And Yogananda said, many times I would laugh. Can you imagine? Sri Teswar, his guru, saying to Paramahansa Yogananda, someday you will go to America. And he laughed in his face. And Sri Teswar said, it's no laughing matter. You will go someday. When the time came in 1920, he went. It was even difficult for him to get a ticket, to get passage, again, largely from the prejudice that he had to experience being an Indian man. And of course, more extremely, he had grown his beard and his long hair in accordance with the yogic tradition and the sannyas tradition, and often wrapped up his hair in the traditional turban. So, quite a sight for a British officer at the shipyard who didn't want to give him a ticket. But he went. But before he went, he said, I want assurance from God, from Bhagavan, from Ma Kali, that I will not lose myself in the fogs of modern utilitarianism. That's the words he used. That I will not lose myself or become lost in the fogs of modern utilitarianism. And I had to look it up. What is utilitarianism? I thought it meant like, oh, you're just being practical and you know how to use things or something, pragmatic. No, it was an actual philosophy originating in England and had some influence from some other European philosophers. And it was largely about ethics. But the basis of it was that happiness was a measurement for your actions. So whatever you do, if it makes you happy and makes other people happy, it's okay. And there were many spin-offs on that philosophy, and sometimes it became very almost hedonistic, like do whatever you want as long as it brings you pleasure. But for the most part, it had more of an ethical view. And I thought, isn't that something? He knew that, because Sri Teswarji made Yogananda go to college. So Yoganandaji went to college, and obviously he had to study philosophy. And in 1920, the utilitarian philosophy was prominent, and he was probably taught it in the schools, which the schools were dominated by the British. You couldn't teach traditional Vedic knowledge. It was prohibited. So he did not want to lose himself in the fogs of modern utilitarianism, which can be very foggy, very confusing about justifying your actions based on happiness and are you making others happy? Well, he knew that that philosophy was not working. It wasn't bringing a healthy society by any means. However, he saw the spiritual potential of the Western lands. And that's why Babaji had said, go there. There are many souls who are seeking the nectar that yoga can give, that our teachings can give. And so he went. And even on the boat, such a long boat ride, one of his countrymen, it was actually another Indian who had been to Americas, was criticizing the Americans to him. And Yogananda even then was defending, and one of the things this man said is, oh, those Americans, they're like children, like fickle, and they're not fully cultured. Yogananda said, oh, that's wonderful, I love children. But this same man, I believe it was him or another countryman, told Yogananda, you better shave that beard. They're not going to accept you. So it was actually on the boat ride. Yoganandaji thought, well, I need to blend in somewhat. I mean, I'm wearing orange robes, I'm brown skinned, I will not cut my hair, and I will wrap it in a turban, but I'll do that much. So he agreed to be shaven. But nothing else. That was his only compromise, although he would wear Western clothes on occasion. But he said, I will never tie anything around my neck. So he never wore ties. But he would wear the coats sometimes. So he adapted. I don't need to tell the hardships that he went through, but he did it all again for love. He loved America. He was well aware of America's flaws. He could see the racism, the prejudices towards people of color, indigenous people, African Americans primarily, but all races. Towards women, he saw the inequality. And towards people of other religions, he never liked that. He didn't want to hear that anywhere. He said when some people were criticizing Mormons and said, oh, Mormons grow horns in their heads, and he heard all of these things, but he never wanted to believe that that's all that America is. He knew of America's potential, the potential to rise above, the potential to break down these barriers, and the potential as the new world to do new things, to live in a new way, to love in a new way. And he saw America expanding into other parts of the world, into Mexico, Central South America, into Canada, and other parts of Europe. He went to Mexico, and he loved it. Mexico. He said Mexico reminded him of India, and that's quite a compliment because he said that he loved India more than any other nation, and that he would rather live in India in her ashes than in anywhere else. What love he had for India. And he said that the yoga ideal was necessary for that to happen. And it's important to remember when we talk about YogaFest and different types of yoga, of this universal meaning of yoga. I know that many of you are connected to YogaFest primarily for the postures and physical yoga and different things, and that's good. That springs from a tradition called Hatha Yoga. And Hatha was largely formulated by the Nath Yogis. Nath Yogis coming from Matsyendranath, and one of the great gurus was Gorakhnath. And Gorakhnath was very influential in yoga, Hatha Yoga, and a lot of the kriyas and different things. And Yoganandaji was born in Gorakhpur, the town named after. Goraknath. And Yoganandaji comes from that tradition, hails from that tradition, which evolved into like Hatha Yoga, Pradipika, Shiva Samhita, where you have different methods, physical methods, purity, different kriyas, different pranayams, different postures, different practices such as fasts, purifying internally the body. He also brought Vedanta and brought Shankya philosophies, but he also brought Bhakti Yoga. He brought devotion to Krishna primarily through the scripture of Bhagavad Gita as a Yoga Shastra. He brought from Tantra the understanding of Divine Mother in her all-pervading nature and of the Kundalini Shakti within the body as related. He really came from such a, what we would say, eclectic background in terms of what India offers. Definitely from the north, being Bengali, which is also very, very diverse. And with that understanding, he was able to come and connect with Christians and Christianity, and even he perceived in his meditations that Jesus went to India and sought India as well, wisdom there. He perceived certain symbolism in the scriptures of and teachings of Moses that connected with yoga. Some may argue that Yoganandaji was interpreting by his own bias. Possibly. I believe he was connecting with truth and seeing the fundamental unity of these religions. But what was his goal? Unite, not convert, not make everyone the same. He highlighted, that's why you see that here in his life. He purposefully visited many different saints. He visited so many. Not to convert to their teachings or not to be initiated by them, not for diksha, but he sought them out so he could experience how they perceived truth or experience how they loved God. He said, my soul took on a desire to experience how other saints love God throughout all different paths. That was one desire that his soul had, and that enabled him to incarnate. And in order to fulfill that desire, that's why when he was going through Europe, he wanted to see Teresa Neumann, the Catholic mystic. That's why he would seek different saints and sages, gurus, men and women. He didn't have the exclusionary boundaries of, oh, I'm not going to go see her, she's a woman. Oh, I'm not going to go there because they worship Shiva and I'm a Vaishnava. No, he didn't say, oh, I'm not going to talk to this Christian because they believe that I'm a heathen. No. He transcended all boundaries. And so in America, over the course of 32 years, he founded Self-Realization Fellowship. He spoke all across the land, everywhere where he was welcome. Now, half the country did not have the grace and good fortune to see Yoganandaji, to be healed by him. He did many healings. He illumined people. He blessed people. Yes, he said many of them came just for curiosity and then later they left. But they left with something. They left with a blessing. But half of the country he couldn't even set foot on because of racism, because of the Jim Crow South. He couldn't even set foot. Whose loss? His loss or their loss? Their loss. Someone said to me, though racism, it's not a spiritual problem, it's a social problem. I said, oh, it's so spiritual that if Jesus himself came in his original body, which was a dark-skinned body of that area in Jerusalem, his own disciples, his own devotees, his own people would not even go see him. Not for social reasons, it's a spiritual disease. But Yoganandaji gave freely to all, and still does, in his spirit and through his teachings and through his books. Yoga, in its physical practice, is meant to be a step towards the spiritual yoga. Once the body is well, then we must forget it and move forward. Practice your Hatha Yoga to take care of the body, but remember that the body can die in an instant. The great Adi Shankara, Shankaracharya, Shankara they call him in their books, but Adi Shankaracharya, who was a Vedantist, said that he went through life metaphorically with two friends always by his side, death and wisdom, Mrit and Gyan, death and wisdom. And if we have that understanding, we realize that let us not dwell too much on the body, otherwise we have sort of a spiritual materialism. It's just another refined form of materialism when you're too obsessed with the body. Yoga has tremendous ways of purifying the body. Vegetarian diet not only is the perfect diet for the body according to yoga, because the human body is vegetarian, it's also non-violent and it's more sustainable. He didn't judge people. He understood that some people had to eat meat, but he pushed vegetarianism a lot. It was a major part of his contribution to America. He tried so hard. He had vegetarian restaurants, and he made hamburgers out of mushrooms in the 1940s. He did so much. He wanted to bring in more health. He developed some exercises for health called yogoda, energization exercises. He encouraged people to exercise, to get out into the sun. He praised the arts and the sciences and said there's no conflict between them. He supported child education. He wanted children to be educated spiritually. He wanted there to be universal religion of love with different religions coming together. That's why at the lake shrine that he built, he created a court of religions, and he placed statues that represented different religions throughout his gardens. He also wanted there to be peace. He spoke out against war and violence and aggression and racism. And he praised Mahatma Gandhi so much for his efforts to peacefully resist and courageously fight against oppression. Paramahansa Yogananda said, the pace of human evolution, he said it's a snail-like pace of human evolution. And look around. Look how slow it is. But he said, with divine love of Divine Mother, with the love of Divine Mother in our hearts, and with the knowledge of yoga, we can quicken our evolution. We can accelerate our evolution to evolve to that place that many of us think is impossible to attain. But it starts first with me and those around me. Right? It starts in your heart, and then in your home, and then a little bit farther. And the way that Divine Mother has set it up is that if you go just a little bit further, you will meet differences. You will meet challenge and division, and that's when you can say, I will evolve faster, and I will manifest love. I will be a forerunner to pave a way to a greater manifestation of soul, of love, of unity, of harmony, of equilibrium, of balance, of health, of justice, of equality, of happiness for all, of understanding. And to help one another do that. Help each other. Help each other. Om. May all beings be established in the self. May all beings be filled with peace. May all beings be fulfilled and complete. May all beings be blessed with sacredness. Om Sarvesham Swastir Bhavatu. Sarvesham Shantir Bhavatu. Sarvesham Mangalam Bhavatu. Sarvesham Purnam Bhavatu. Sarvesham Purnam Bhavatu. O eternal, divine, beloved God, Mother, Father, friend, lead us from that which is unreal to that which is real, from untruth to truth, from darkness to light, from the darkness of ignorance to the light of understanding, and from death to eternal life. Om Asato Ma Sat Gamaya Namaso Ma Jyoti Gamaya Mrityor Ma Amritam Gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Now I will offer a chant. This is an invocation and a prayer of love to the Divine Mother in Sanskrit, a very ancient chant. Sarva Mangala Mangalye Shive Sarvartha Sadhike Sharanye Trayambake Gauri Narayani Namostute. Om Shristi Stiti Vinashanam Shakti Bhute Sanatani Gunashraye Gunamye Narayani Namostute. Sharanagata Dinarata Paritrana Parayani Sarvashatri Hare Devi Narayani